Okay, amazing. So our next group up has focused on SDGs 3 and 17 with their project Promoting Helpful Attitudes, Harm Reduction and Drug Use in the Philippines.
Good day, everyone. Our group's presentation is titled Promoting Helpful Attitudes, Advocacy Project for Harm Reduction in the Philippines. So drug use is a significant issue in the country, with around 4.8 million people using illegal drugs in 2019. This manifests in increased rates of drug-related crime, the transmission of infectious diseases such as HIV, and overdose deaths. However, harm reduction approaches do not receive political support. Some prominent figures are even actively contributing to stigma. Vicente Soto III, former senator and former Senate president, described harm reduction as a Western approach, incompatible with the country's beliefs and values. He compared giving clean syringes to people who inject drugs to giving clean knives to murderers. Local and global attempts to reduce the supply and demand for drugs have not reduced the overall number of people who use drugs. This poses a threat to public health, as the use of shared injecting equipment carries a high risk of HIV or hepatitis transmission among users. Our group believes that health is a human right, but people often forget that people who inject drugs also deserve proper and adequate health care. Harm reduction approaches enable human rights, and implementing them is necessary to end HIV transmissions, late HIV presentations, and preventable HIV-related deaths. So with that said, our goal is to leverage our competencies in website creation, writing, global health, literature reviews, leadership, and advocacy to support positive public perception on HIV harm reduction interventions in the Philippines and globally through engagement of youth as a future generation of opinion leaders and change makers.
Harm reduction is a holistic and evidence-based approach to public health aimed at reducing the negative outcomes of drug use on individuals, groups, and communities. This method recognizes that the reasons why people start using drugs are complex and often linked to inequities, and that they may not be able to remain abstinent. Our project is relevant to Sustainable Development Goal number 3, good health and well-being, as well as number 17, partnership for the goals. We created a website to host our deliverables. Here we made a briefing note as a resource written in accessible language that is advocating for the increased awareness and implementation of harm reduction strategies in the Philippines. Harm reduction services directly benefit people who use drugs, their families, and the community as a whole. This briefing note acknowledges the colonial legacies that have influenced the current approach to drug use and provides a summary of the evolution of drug use and public opinion towards it. This note also critically evaluates the successes and challenges associated with harm reduction in the Philippines and makes recommendations for future efforts. This briefing note serves as a resource for individuals and organizations interested in understanding the role of harm reduction in addressing drug use and related issues in the Philippines. Along with it, we also have a link towards resources, as well as an advocacy letter. All of our deliverables utilize plain language to make it accessible to diverse stakeholders, as well as people-first language so that we're emphasizing the person rather than the addiction. We created a guideline on how to create and use advocacy letters as a tool for communicating with policymakers.
The process of creating our project is as follows. As we had a member based in the Philippines, they were able to educate us on the issue of drug use in the Philippines and that the stigma surrounding it is only increasing the issue. So we chose that as our topic, and we engaged in a literature review in which we also compiled resources we found useful in our search, such that they could be accessible on the website as Jigme described. We synthesized our research findings, and initially our goal was to draft a policy brief. A policy brief is a document which is typically shown to policymakers to inform their decision-making. However, we quickly realized that we are not necessarily subject experts in harm reduction, but that we are experts in that we are able to work with our peers. And so our theory of change is that peer-to-peer awareness on the benefits of harm reduction will form a positive perception, a positive public perception of harm reduction as a policy strategy. And so the public support of youth as an electorate will eventually increase political will to establish and sustain these harm reduction programs, which we know are so useful as seen in the evidence. Again, we have a harm reduction toolbox with the briefing note, the webpage, and the advocacy letter. We did consider the sustainability of the project. Ideally, we are going to have a roundtable discussion with the development studies students in various campuses in the University of Philippines in both the bachelor and master's level. Secondly, our goal is to promote advocacy through letter writing for not only harm reduction, but also all issues.